In the last month, a 15-year-old played for Arsenal, and a 40-year-old scored a brace for Portugal. Something in football is bending time. Clubs are sculpting teenagers ready for the Premier League, while squeezing every last drop of football out of the older generation. Max Dowman and Rio Ungamoa are perfect examples of this. They're school kids stepping onto the biggest stage of football. But older players aren't exactly fading. In fact, they're more vital than ever. Ronaldo's still starting for Portugal, 23 years after his debut. So what's actually happening? How can footballers be getting older and younger at the same time? Well, it turns out it's thanks to the same reason. YouTube tells us that most of you watching are in your mid-20s to 30s. Another bunch of you are in your early adulthood, with the rest falling above 35 years old. Almost nobody watching is younger than 18. In fact, just 4.8%, meaning only around 2% of our viewers are aged 15 and below, which means that 98% of you watching this video are older than Max Dowman. Feel old yet? No wonder. Dowman made his Premier League debut for Arsenal a few weeks ago at just 15 years and 235 days old. He still has to sit his GCSEs next year. He's so young that he's only older than Cristiano Jr. by 168 days. If he was born just a day later, his birth year would be 2010. And the craziest part, he's not even the youngest debutant in Premier League history. Ethan Nwaneri made his debut 54 days younger than Dowman. In fact, the youngest 3 debutants in the Premier League have all come in the last 3 years. But Dowman isn't an exception. Just a couple weeks ago, Liverpool's young prospect Rio Ungamoa scored a 100th minute goal against Newcastle, only the second 16-year-old ever to score a winner in the Premier League. But what impressed me wasn't the goal, it was the manner he did it in. His short cameo was a confidence-filled display of a fearless winger at just 16 years of age, and his finish is what really stood out, with all the technique and flair of a seasoned striker. To show that kind of poise at such a young age, away from home with 3 points on the line, that's really rare at 16. But this wasn't a mistake or a fluke. English academies have quietly been building superstars that are perfectly adapted to every part of the modern game. And that's thanks to the EPPP, or the Premier League's Elite Player Performance Plan. Both Dowman and Ungamoa are products of this newfound plan, introduced in 2012, created to guide the next talents of England to the pro level. And it's not just about coaching. From as young as 9, players receive full support from academies, from help with transport to training, cutting down travel time, to GPS and heart rate monitors that manage physical performance, coupled with weight and nutrition plans to help keep their bodies in the most elite conditions possible. Sports psychologists are heavily involved, helping the youth cope with the enormous modern-day stress of being a footballer. To help them review games, elevate their confidence and give them a strong media training that helps players cope with the attacking English press. These academy players are effectively being treated like full professionals from the start. The effect this is having is that players coming out of academies are completely physically and mentally ready for the brutal nature of the Prem, even before their 18th birthday. Lamine Yamal's a perfect point of comparison. He's probably the best young talent we've seen in the last decade, and his physical capabilities on the pitch are well beyond his years. But does display his raw side on his social media, with his expressive nature, as we saw with the controversies surrounding his 18th birthday. Rio Ungamoa tends to stay away from social media, thanks to his brother and support from role models like Salah, saying he needs to enjoy moments like his goal against Newcastle with himself and his family. I'm not saying Yamal's career will fail because of this, but social media definitely sees too much of the winger's personal life, which may harm him in the future. The impact of this new system in England is obvious, and it's clearly working. We can look at the average age of debutants in the Premier League since the mid-2010s to get an idea of where things are at. And it's dropping fast. In just the last 5 years, the average age has dropped nearly 2, and the trend line indicates this number is going to keep going down and down. And it's not just the debuts, the youth are playing more, becoming consistent starters in some of the best teams. Since the 2015-16 season, the number of minutes played by teenagers has tripled, from around 6,500 a season to nearly 19,000. Chelsea are a prime example of the EPPP being put into place, and the effect is clear on their first team today. They have so much license to spend in each transfer window, as they outsell all the other clubs thanks to their insane academy output. This summer they made 129.2 million selling players on, some of which were homegrown talent. Chelsea have the youngest average starting lineup age in the Premier League at just 23.2, and get this, they don't have a single player in their starting lineup that's older than 27, not a single one. But the game isn't just trending younger, it's also trending older. The same tools that prepare a 15-year-old, recovery, nutrition, load management, allow veterans to stay in peak physical and mental condition well into their late 30s. Ronaldo is the perfect example of this. He eats differently, trains differently, and takes care of his mind and body better than anyone. And the result? Well, he's still playing and scoring in international football for Portugal at 40. And as surprising as this is, it shouldn't be, as Ronaldo's commitment to his career is like nothing else. Whilst less impressive than Cristiano, Modric and James Milner are still performing in the top leagues well into their late 30s, and they're prime examples of the wider trend of players extending their careers longer than previously thought possible. Don't get me wrong, older players have always existed, but just not to the same capacity and level that these players are doing nowadays. Let's compare two eras to illustrate this, by looking at the ages of the Prem's team of the season from last year, and then all the way back in 89-90. These are the elite from the league, players in their prime, so good they were named the best in that position for that season. The 89-90 season had some true legends of the game. David Seaman in goal, Paul Gascoigne in the middle, and John Barnes leading the attack. These players were all around the traditional prime age of 27, with a few exceptions with only one player older than 30. The difference between the youngest and the older player was 10 years, and the average age was 27.7. If we create a box plot for the age ranges, we can see the group was concentrated heavily at 26 to 29 years old. But fast forward to last season, and it's a much different story. The average age of the group is somehow exactly the same at 27.7, but for alternate reasons. The age spread is now 13 years, and the youngest of the bunch is Kerkez at just 21 years old. 4 players are over the age of 30, and 4 are under the age of 25, compared to just 1 and 2 in the season from the past. From the box plot, we can see that the spread of players is much wider to encompass young and old. The difference is clear. Players are able to hit their stride and be the best they can be in a much wider opportunity window, instead of the couple years around their 27th birthday. It must fill present-day players with confidence that modern methods are able to give them a window of a decade to hit their prime, instead of just 1 or 2 years. And it may be limited just comparing 2 years, but it does prove useful to see a snapshot of how the league is progressing. But it's not just English football that's progressing. The other top European leagues seem to be following suit. The Ballon d'Or rankings are a perfect example of this. The winners over the last couple years have really shown us that old is gold. Before Rodri's win last year, no Ballon d'Or winner has been under the age of 30 for the last decade, with the last time an under 25 winning the award being Leo Messi in 2012. This year's award is no exception to this changing age demographic. The frontrunners for the award age are spread so thinly that there's a 15-year gap between 2 of them. On one hand, we've got the previously mentioned exceptional youngster Yamal at just 18 years old, and on the other side we've got Salah, hitting another prime in his career at 33 years old. A decade and a half between them, and both are performing at the world's highest level. It just doesn't make sense. Admittedly, the likely winner Dembele falls in the classic prime age category of 28 years, but the massive spread in the frontrunners really shows how football is evolving. In recent years, players like Modric and Benzema have taken home the award after their so-called primes, and it just might help football fans and teams start to look at football a bit differently. Players typically start losing transfer value at around 28 years old, but with a different outlook on age it could and probably should change. I mean, Salah just had the best season of his career at 33, and a season like that was completely invaluable to Liverpool winning the league. I'm sure any team would spend a lot to sign a player that could play at that level regardless of their age. Players' values across the board will rise, as academies can justify selling fully developed under-18s for millions, whilst the experience of a player later in their career like Salah could prove valuable. It's hard to say how long the game will keep expanding, and how big the age gap between players will become. Milner and Ballon are currently 24 years apart, and if Ballon followed the same path as Milner, he'd play right into the year 2050. But who knows, we may just be reaching the limits on what humans as footballers can achieve, as I just can't see any 14-year-olds playing in the Prem anytime soon. Playing from young, however, isn't to everyone's advantage. Players like Neymar and Hazard are similar age to Salah, and one of them's retired, whilst the other hasn't played top-flight football for years now. These players were overplayed when they were young, thanks to their immense talent, but now suffer the consequences thanks to endless injury problems that even ended Hazard's career early. The new conditions and science that control footballers' lives from such a young age should help eliminate some of these problems and push players to have long, successful careers. It's amazing to me how far the integration of technology into football is pushing the game. These prospects rising from academies in England promise a bright future for the national team, but what they really show is that under the right conditions, coupled with modern technology, that no human in sport is truly limited.